All right, well now we're just gonna tell the story of the golden game here. That's what we're gonna do.
Okay. You know, we wanted to make the pieces unique. So each one has its own kind of personality. And it's this interplay between this kind of foreground and background. So there's a light that we see directly that's diffused, and it's intentionally, we're not seeing any pixels, we're not seeing any of the technology. And then there's a secondary light that's pointing at the back, at this surface made of white oak. So you have this interplay between the foreground and background that's optically very interesting. And there's some elements of abstract painting, but also sculpture and even architecture and the way that the slats work. And it's very dependent on where you are physically. Like you can move and have a whole different experience depending on where you are. You know, and then there's the final layer of the way it illuminates the gallery itself. So it becomes a lantern, and it isn't just about the object, it's the effect it has on the space. So it adds up to a pretty heady mix. The name Golden Game comes from a book I have on 17th century alchemical engravings. I've always been interested in like esoteric knowledge and how things work and breaking things down and geometry and rules and all these things. And I started to look at these patterns of these attempts to understand how things work, these cosmological systems. So it felt very fertile. The work is all abstract and it's very low resolution relatively. But even with that limited amount of lights, we're able to create this sort of magic. There's a lot of generative things happening when I'm making the work. There's a lot of adding light, subtracting light. But in a way, it's almost like, you know, working with like a bonsai or something. You know, it has its own nature and it's growing, and you can have an effect, you can sort of shape it, but you want to allow it to grow and
Express its nature.
Yeah.
In that, I think you have a kinship to action painting in a way. It's rule-based, but it is also free. And you're finding things in the process.
There's the rules, but then there's also this feeling of life in it. And achieving that in these kind of, with digital tools, I think is something that is challenging, but I've found a way to do that, which I think is exciting.